What's up guys, this is Masi. Welcome to another video. In this video I want to show you how to find out the degree of a polynomial and the leading coefficient. For example, somebody give you this polynomial and they ask you to find out the degree of the polynomial and also the leading coefficient. Degree of the polynomial is going to be the largest exponent. So we're going to say the degree is 4, or you can say we are dealing with quadratic equation or quadratic function. And what about the leading coefficient? Leading coefficient is going to be the coefficient of the leading term, the coefficient of the term which has the largest exponent. So leading coefficient is going to be 5. So that's going to be the leading coefficient. Now let's see other examples. This example, the degree is going to be 3 because that's the largest exponent, and the leading coefficient is going to be the coefficient of the largest exponent, which is going to be -1 in this case. So that's going to be the leading coefficient. So as you see here, it is pretty easy to find out the degree of polynomial and leading coefficient for distributed polynomials. Sometimes we have it in terms of factored form. For example, you have 2 times x minus 1 times x plus 1 times x minus 2. They give you a function like this in factored form, and they ask you what is going to be the degree and leading coefficient of this function. So the degree is going to be, we have in factored form, the degree of this part is 1, degree of this part is 1, degree of this part is 1. So together 1 plus 1 plus 1 is going to be, the degree will be 3. And that makes sense. When you expand it, x times x times x is going to be x to the power of 1 plus 1 plus 1, which is 3. Now let's find out the LC, or leading coefficient. Leading coefficient is going to be 2 times 1, because the exponent here is 1, exponent here is 1, exponent here is 1. 2 times 1 times 1 times 1 will be 2. Let's see another example. We have negative x minus 1 times 2x plus 1 to the power of 2. What about this example? Somebody asks you what is the degree and leading coefficient of this function. You have -1. Basically we want to find out degree first. So degree of this part is 1 and degree of this part is going to be 2 because the exponent is 2. So 2 plus 1 is going to be 3. So the degree of this equation is going to be 3. Now let's find out the leading coefficient. Leading coefficient is going to be -1 times coefficient in this part, which is 1. And the coefficient in this part is 2 to the power of 2. So it's going to be -1 times 1 times 2 squared, which is going to be -4. So the LC is -4 and the degree is 3. Now let's take a look to this equation. They ask you to find out the degree of this function and also the leading coefficient. The degree here in terms of factored form, this is going to be to the power of 2 and this part to the power of 3. So it's going to be 2 plus 3. We end up having 5 in here. What about the leading coefficient? That's going to be -2 times 1 squared times 2 cubed. So that will be -2 times 2 to the power of 3 is going to be 8. So leading coefficient is going to be -16. Next number, we have 2x minus 1 to the power of 2, and we have 3 minus 2x to the power of 3. And now again they ask you to find out the degree of this function. Degree of this part is going to be 2 and this part is going to be 3, so that's going to be 5, and the leading coefficient is going to be 3 times 2 to the power of 2 and then negative 2, which we need to find out the coefficient of x, negative 2 to the power of 3, so it's going to be 3 times 4 times negative 8, which is going to be negative 96. Next example. Negative 2x, x minus 1, 2x plus 3 to the power of 2. Now somebody asks you what is going to be the degree of this function and what is the leading coefficient. The degree is going to be 1 in here, because when you have x, it's the same as x minus 0 or x plus 0. So that's why you just see it as x. So the degree of this part is 1, degree of this part is 1, this one is 2. So 1 plus 2 is going to be 4. Now what is the LC? It's going to be negative 2 times 1 times 2 squared, which we have negative 8. Next one, y equals to 3x squared, 3x minus 1 to the power of 2. Somebody asks you to find out the degree of this part. We have 2 plus 2, which is going to be 4, and the leading coefficient is going to be 3 times 3 to the power of 2. So 3 times 9 is going to be 27. Now next example, we have y equals to 3 times x squared plus 2x plus 3 to the power of 2. What is going to be the degree of this function? We have x to the power of 1, which is going to be 1, and x squared to the power of 2, which will be 4. So 4 plus 1, the degree of the function is 5, or sometimes called quintic. Because if the degree is 1, we call it linear. If the degree is 2, we call it quadratic. If the degree is 3, we call it cubic. If 4 is, call it quartic. And 5, we call it quintic. So this one, since the degree is 5, we call it quintic function. What is going to be the leading coefficient? Leading coefficient is going to be 3 times 1 to the power of 2, which is going to be just 3. Let's see this example. What is going to be the degree and leading coefficient of this example? The degree is going to be 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. So we have the degree is 5. What about the leading coefficient? That will be 2 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 2 times 1. So we're going to end up having 4. Now let's see what is going to be the degree of leading coefficient, degree and leading coefficient of this function. So here, as you see here, we have x cubed, x squared, x to the power 4. So the largest exponent is going to be this one. So we need to rearrange it first. So 7x4 plus 8x cubed plus 4x squared minus 9x. So now you can see the degree is 4 and the leading coefficient is going to be 7. Next example. We have y equals to x plus 3 times x squared minus 5x minus 4. You should know it by now. The degree is going to be 1 plus 2. It's going to be 3. The exponents are 1. So 1 plus 2, 3. And the leading coefficient is going to be 1 times 1. Next example. We have x cubed times x minus 2 squared times 5x plus 1. What is going to be the degree? The degree of this function will be 3 plus 2 plus 1. So we have 6. What about the leading coefficient? Leading coefficient is going to be 1 cubed, 1 squared times 5. So the answer is going to be 5. The last one is going to be x times x plus 3 times x minus 1 squared. The degree will be 1 plus 1 plus 2, so it's 4. And the leading coefficient is going to be 1 times 1 times 1 squared, which is going to be 1 as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave me a comment if you have any question, and I get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching and have a great day.